Hi, I'm Kat, I play Sims, and I built this modern beach house in Sulani. Now, first things first, yes, it is a box made of a series of boxes, but it's a tropical box, and ultimately that's what I wanted. The foundation for the house is stilts. I moved it up and down a couple of times. It looked better higher from the back on the ocean side, but it looked better a little bit lower on the front. But ultimately, what made us change the height in the end was the landscaping because I wanted all the bushes to sit underneath the foundation rather than around it clipping into the house. I added a bit of a weird little deck space on the back. I used columns and spandrels. Once I deleted the roof on it, I actually didn't like the spandrels very much, but it takes us ages to come back and actually remove them. I moved back around the front and added a door from Eco Lifestyle. I wanted a lot of open space and light here, so I made the kitchen with the glass walls and the dining area with the glass walls as well. I did build this just after the update, so I was obsessed with them at the time. I covered the outside of the house with a nice peachy stucco from the Courtyard Oasis kit. Accidentally changed my glass windows and had to go back and redo them. I added a gravel texture to the roof, and then I went looking for the item from Island Living that's kind of like a skylight or a window pane for the ceiling or floor, and I added these basically all over the roof. I hadn't thought about the fact that doing this before the floor plan meant I would need to work the walls around the ceiling tiles, but it worked out okay in the end. The floor plan took a little bit of working out just because I'd already made a box made of boxes and I wanted some more interesting shapes inside. So I did try to make it a more interesting floor plan, but I also wanted a lot of open space just because of the design of the house. When it came to lighting, the clear tiles came back to bite us again because I kept having to check whether I was putting the light in the middle of the glass or whether it was on an actual roof piece. And I just started adding doors and archways on the inside. There is a lot of custom content in this build, starting with the doors and moving on to basically every other category. I decided on a pale wood colour rather than the orangey one that I had on the deck outside. I just thought it looked nicer and brighter indoors, and I tiled the bathrooms in a sort of blue and white. As usual, I used the sleek bathroom kit on the walls, but the floors were custom content, and I just put a plain stucco on the inside. I added about 1,000 large windows outside just to make it as light and airy as possible. Those are from Island Living, and I just really like the way they look tiled. I moved on to landscaping, which was one of my favourite parts because I really enjoy the items in the Island Living landscaping, and I used a lot of Jungle Adventure as well. I put some sort of red plants in the water at the back. I did a few taller plants, and then I started adding by far my favourite bush in the entire game, which I lifted the foundation again to make sure it would fit underneath nicely. At this point, I added just 1,000 low-lying plants of different kinds. I think a couple of different packs as well, but it was mostly Island Living and Jungle Adventure. I just filled as much space as I possibly could with the low-lying plants and then started adding little pops of colour here and there. It was still basically Island Living and Jungle Adventure, and there was some really nice orange and some nice purples in there, as well as some climbing plants on the side of the house. I made sure to get some terrain paint under all of the planting just to make it a little bit more realistic, and then I decided to add some on top of the box for the dining room as well. Just the same sort of plants that I'd had on the bottom, but in a little patch on the roof. I moved inside and couldn't quite decide what to do first, but it came to us that I'd like to make the living room kind of a lowered pit, just so that it had some more interest compared to the open space in the rest of the area. And then I moved on to the dining area and put a really large table in there with some Island Living seats. Basically did quite a neutral colour palette in there. I added a rug and some plants just to make it a little bit more interesting. I messed around with some hanging plants for a minute there and then moved on to the sitting area where I put a Dream Home Decorator table and all of the Dream Home Decorator modular chairs. And I did them in the same sort of peachy coral colour that was on the outside of the house. I was trying to introduce more colour in the furnishings and decorations because I'd kept the floor and walls so neutral. This house does use a lot of Courtyard Oasis and Dream Home Decorator, and I just put a really nice rug down from For Rent and sized it up with tools so that it filled most of the space. I decided to add another little seating area in the corner overlooking the water, and I used almost all Cozy Kitch kit in the orange shades. This was intended to be more of a read and nook space separated from the main living area. I used a lot of custom content on the walls because it fit the colour scheme so perfectly. I used a load of ottomans from Cozy Kitch and the cushions from Comfy Gamer, and then I made a sort of gallery wall outside of the bathroom with even more custom content wall decoration and a couple of Cozy Kitch items. I just added a little pillow to the sofa, and then I put a Courtyard Oasis jar outside of the bathroom to make it a little bit more interesting, and then I moved on to the kitchen in this big glass area. For the kitchen, I went with a yellow colour scheme. I used the fridge from Kitchen Clutter Kit, and Dream Home Decorator made another appearance in the counters. I was adding as much counter space as possible because it was such a big area. I added a few upper cabinets again from Dream Home Decorator, and I put some open shelving in between so that I could clutter it up. I tweaked the size of the fridge very slightly with Tool Mod just to make it touch the cabinets either side, and then I went a little bit backwards and forwards on the counters because I wanted a seating area, but I also wanted to use the little island from Kitchen Clutter. I did manage to fit both in the end, and it filled a lot more space, which was exactly what I wanted. I started filling as much space as possible as well with clutter, starting with the Kitchen Clutter Kit because I love basically every item in it, and I just put stuff down randomly at first and then started trying to tweak it. A few of the items would not behave while I was trying to alt place them. They kept clipping through the walls and stuff, so I had to keep going backwards and forwards to try and make it all fit right. I did leave a good amount of counter space for Sims to cook and for them to sit and eat at, but I filled all of the shelves with as much stuff as I possibly could. There is custom content in here as well, but mostly it's Kitchen Clutter Kit. I added the functional grocery bag from the kit, and it does let your Sims buy their basic cooking ingredients from home. I like to add it to a fair few builds now because it does add a nice little bit extra gameplay. I added a little coffee area on the other side with the Cozy Bistro coffee machine, which I still think is the best one in the game. I added another rug from For Rent in front of the oven, which is in the danger zone, but I just liked the way it looked. And then I wanted a really big plant to decorate this open space, so I ended up putting one in from Businesses and Hobbies. Right now it does look like I've got no bin, but in a shocking twist of fate for me, I actually remembered to put one in. I decided to use the space directly outside the kitchen for shoe racks and backpacks and things like that. I could have put them next to the main door, but I just felt like this was a nice little corner for it, and it meant I could put a seating area in as well. In the real world, that would mean you were tracking sand all the way through the house, but in The Sims, I just liked the way it looked over there better. I moved out onto the deck, and I wanted to use this hammock item that I had at CC, so I just put a little side table next to it with a candle. I added a little beach towel, and then I was going to add a boat or a jet ski, and I ended up settling on a pool floater instead. At first I couldn't work out where to put it, but I just put it off to the side, and then I decided to add a little bit more skill building out there, so I put a chess table down. I moved on to the hallway bathroom inside. I used custom content counters again, and I put a couple of sinks in there. I added a bath, and I decided to raise it up on a small platform, which I did quite a lot in the bathrooms in this house, just making split levels. I pushed a Jungle Adventure shower in the wall to hide its tile, but in the end I did just replace it with the sleek bathroom one because it didn't have a surround. I started adding the usual bits and pieces of bathroom clutter. As I was scrolling, I saw the chopping boards for the kitchen and went to add them in. And then I went back to decorating the bathroom again when that was done. I found some ocean-themed decoration like the fish on a stick, and I put the usual shelf in as well as a fishing rod on the wall. I just added a couple of rugs, a bath mat, and some mirrors. Put some lighting over the top of the mirrors, and then a few bits of clutter on the bathroom counters just to fill the space. I got a little bit of artwork for the blank space in between the mirrors, and then I just got a couple of ropes for by the door, and I was done with that bathroom. I picked a nice colourful laundry day rug for in front of the main door, and then I wanted a plant for this corner, and I wound up using a Wedding Stories giant bouquet thing, and then I did my favourite little trick and added a mirror behind it. This is finally when I decided to get rid of the columns and spandrels out on the deck and make it look so much better. And as I was bopping around in this area, I finally remembered that I needed a bin in the kitchen. I never did remember a mailbox outside though, so I failed on one count at least. I wanted to separate the little seating area off a little bit more, so I used the shelves from the sleek bathroom kit and I just put a little bit of decoration there. And then I moved on again and decided to start making this room into an art studio. I basically used every item from the artist studio kit in here. I made the floor a bit dirty with paint spatters. I put the easel right up against a big window so it was looking out over the water, and I basically just cluttered it up with as much stuff from that kit as I possibly could, all in a sort of yellow colour scheme in here to match the kitchen. I spent a little while moving things around to make them fit nicely, and then I put as much stuff up on the walls as I could just to fill the blank spaces. The curtain as well, which I think is for movie hangout and I use quite a lot. And then I decided to move on to this corner, which was going to be kind of an entryway space because it was closer to the door. And I just used a table from Nifty Knitting with some bits and pieces of glitter on top, as well as a child's bag and coat item by the front door. I used another laundry day rug in the entrance to the art studio just to make something fill the gap, and then I put a rug in the seating area as well, and a couple of little bits of decoration just to fill in the spaces. I put in a couple of plants and then I decided to move on to the main bedroom, which I ended up doing in a sort of pink and teal colour scheme. The bed and side tables are from Island Living, and then I decided to add a really bright dresser in the corner as well that fit the colours perfectly. I used an Island Living desk looking out over the water, and I added a chair from Pastel Pop, and I used the Comfy Gamer Kit computer in here as well. I did a bunch more cluttering with a mix of items from kits and from CC. If I ever do a build that doesn't include the open book from Comfy Gamer, it's probably not me. Somebody's taken over my life because it is my favourite item in the game at the moment. I just moved the items around on the side tables to make them fit a bit nicer and added a couple of extra plants. I added a rug which is actually from base game, and I don't think I've ever used this colour swatch, but it fits the colour scheme really nicely. And I added my favourite mirror from Jungle Adventure. I add the little blanket rack item and then a divider just to make it look like the space is split up slightly. I decided to do the walls in plain colours to match the colour scheme, and I just added one pink wall and the others were blue. I put some wall art up over the bed. There's a mix of CC, Cozy Kitsch and some in-game items, and then I put another plant in the corner just to fill a gap. In the space outside the bedrooms, I decided to make a kind of play corner for kids, so I put in a dollhouse, a few different toys, a nice rug, and I put some more seating in the corner, which is another movie hangout item because I like the really bright colours out here. I pulled it out a little bit from the wall and added a plant behind it for decoration. I stuck a few different chairs in the area, and then I put a little kids' bookcase on the wall behind as well. I moved on to this bathroom, which is kind of a Jack and Jill bathroom shared by the two kids' rooms. So I put a load of the decals on the walls from, I think, Growing Together, and I put brighter counters in here as well. With it being a kid's bathroom, I got to use swatches on stuff that I wouldn't normally, like this whale shower tub combo. I moved the decals around a little bit to fit, and I put a regular toilet in as well as a toddler potty in there as well. I cluttered it up. I added some towels, some rugs, a mirror over the sink that's a really nice CC that looks like an open door. I put toothbrushes and different coloured towels up, and then I moved on to the first of the kids' bedroom, which is a room for an infant. It's more of a purple colour scheme in here. I've got a crib and a changing table with a little bin. There's an infant play mat that's a really nice bit of CC that's a little bit more simple than the base game ones, and then I added some more toys and clutter and things that were mostly CC as well. I put a really bright ottoman in front of the window, surrounded it with toys, and raised a couple of little toddler books up on it to make it look like they're in use. I just put a load of stuff all over the floor to make it look a little bit more lived in, and then I had this CC wallpaper that's like rainbows, but they were purple to fit the colour scheme. I do try to get a rug to match it, but for some reason it didn't have the same swatch. And I got these high school years curtains, which I put the Desert Lux curtain rail over the top of. The lighting wasn't quite right for them in here, so they did look really, really dark. And I put a little night light by the crib as well. I put a few different things on the walls. There's a baby shelf from the game, and then I started adding these drawings, which I think were also CC. And I used Tool Mod to try and rotate them a little bit so they weren't also neat on the walls. I added a height chart on one wall, finished with the decorations here, and then moved on to the second child's room. This one's based heavily around some dinosaur-themed CC I've got. I used the little inflatable chair from the reward event not too long ago. I added as much dinosaur-themed stuff as I had, and I put a science table as well as an activity table in front of the windows just to make sure there was enough skill building stuff in here. I used an amazing dinosaur wallpaper from the same CC set, and then I just put some base game curtains up in a sort of blue sky pattern with the desert looks rail over the top as usual. I decided to put the corkboard up in here as well so the sim can collect postcards, and I gave them a pet rat and used a really nice bright rug in the middle of the room. I just added a little bedside table from base game, and then a bedside bookshelf that is also CC, as well as a little dresser. The next room to tackle was the primary bathroom, and I decided to do some more split leveling in here. So there's actually a 2-step system for the bath and some clutter to sit on it with that courtyard oasis tile on it again. And then I lowered an area for the shower in the other corner. This is another bathroom that relies heavily on the sleek bathroom kit. Everything's in the dark blue swatch, which I actually rarely use. It's usually the more neutral ones that go into my bathrooms. I just add a bit of clutter, a rug, some various bits of CC in here to make it more interesting. I put quite a lot on the steps leading up to the bath. While I was at it, I came across the dirty pile of clothing clutter, so I just stuck that in the child's room and then went back to decorating the bathroom. I added a few bits of clutter like a robe, and I put a bunch of candles for ambient lighting. I put dividers from the sleek bathroom kit and then some of the shelves as well. And I just tried to clutter and decorate those as much as possible, as well as putting a little towel rail next to the shower. I decided I wanted completely different lighting in this bathroom. Instead of it being quite so stark and white, I wanted something slightly warmer. So I used a few different items in there just to change the tone of it, and then I kept cluttering with rugs and towels and things like that. I put a couple of bits of wall art up, which were actually both from cats and dogs, but they fit really, really well. And then I started adding things to the main space again, just to make it more interesting. I added some more little clutter items like the phone and keys and some canvases by the door. And then I really wanted to fill this big space, so I ended up putting a games table in it. And with that, I was finally done and happy with it. So thanks for watching and enjoy the screenshots. Thanks for watching. Please consider leaving a like and subscribe.